everyone, Peter Hewitt, La Artistino here. Today we're going to play in a colouring book. Some time ago I was contacted by the Chinese shopping website Banggood to review some of their products. I took a look at one of their diamond paintings in a previous video. They've also sent me a set of alcohol markers, their own brand called Touch Cool markers. These markers took a little bit longer to get to me as I was stuck in Laos for a while, which is no fault of the company. International shipping can take anywhere from 10 days to a month or more, although I find in Australia I usually receive items in 2 or 3 weeks. That's pretty normal for any international shipping here, so it's no bother to me. But let's have a look at these Touch Cool markers. Now, I started my alcohol marking arting right at the top end with these Copic markers. Not actually this set, I had the chisel tipped ones to start off with, as they were the only ones available in Australia at the time. But they're expensive, and these sketch ones retail at about $12 each, with the original chisel tip ones about $10 each. So the way I got them mostly was just to buy them 1 or 2 a fortnight for a long time. And I eventually had enough to make a reasonably good set. This set came a bit later as a bit of a tax return bonus. So, what are the cheaper alternatives? Well, we're very lucky in this day and age. There is a large range of budget-friendly alcohol markers, and the Touch Cool markers are part of this range. These are markers available from Banggood, from their website, and I will leave all the relevant links below for you to check out. Now, these markers come complete in a set of 80, which range in price. We're about $61.44 Australian, and the 40 set, which I have here, is $38.57 Australian. Now, of course, these prices can change slightly with currency changes, but if you want to know what they cost in your currency, go to the Banggood site and select your country of origin, and you'll get the correct prices in your currency. Oh, there was also free shipping with these as well. As I said, all the links will be down below. Anyway, we will get on to reviewing. Are they any good? Well, I started off by swatching all of the colours here. Now, there are 40 in the pack, and the first thing I noticed was there are a lot of greens in this pack. I think the 80, there's a better spread of colours, but this really concentrates on the green. So this, I think, would be a good set for people who are colouring in, like to colour in a lot of flora and natural scenes, but still a good range of colours. There's a lot of good basic colours here. I would have liked a few more yellows, I think, and I definitely would have liked some more reds, but it's not a bad range anyway. There are a lot of greys as well, and you can use greys. A lot of people look at greys and say, well, what can I do with greys? Greys are great if you want to colour in something that neutral tone, and it's great for neutral colouring in the background or around so that you make your colours stand out better. So you can certainly use those. And I think for the price at $38.50, it means 40 markers, it's less than $1 per marker, and that's pretty good for alcohol markers. And I also decided to try them out in the field with colouring, and we're going to do this as well in a short moment. I coloured in a picture from Hannah Lynn's Enchanted Faces, because this is a lovely little book to get things done really quick, and it's very satisfying. I coloured in this picture here of one of her mermaids in this book, and I started off by laying down the original colours, base colours, with the Touchwood alcohol markers, and then going back over later with some polychromos pencils to give a little bit more of shade and emphasis and make the picture sparkle. And I was very pleased with it. This other picture I've done here, which you've seen in a previous video, I coloured in with a combination of Copic markers and Sharpies, and the quality is, on this particular paper, is just the same. Okay, this is the Amazon paper, I believe, as well. So if you've got one of these Amazon books, or a book printed through Amazon, you're going to get pretty much the same result. Anyway, let's give a go with colouring a picture, and I'll use this to do like another mini tutorial on colouring with alcohol markers. So first off, we'll select a picture. And this one she calls Kissy Fish, I guess because of the little fishy here. I think it's going to be a good candidate for colouring in, as pretty much all these pictures in this book are. Let's face it, I love Hannah Lynn's work. I'm just deciding on a colour scheme, and I think I've got one pretty much mapped out in my head. I like to start by figuring out loosely what colours will go where, so that I can build up a picture in my head about approximately what it's going to look like in the end. And I think I have decided I'll do peacock blue in the background. We're going to go, we'll make her a light-skinned mermaid this time. Okay, right, before we start we need to, because this is a picture right near the end of the book, it's a bit flappy here, so what I might do is I've got a watercolour pad here which I'll stick underneath, which will just give me a bit of a level feel to work in. I also have a book here which is one of these little cheap A6 size sketchbooks which I use to test my colours on. Go to a page that hasn't been used. I just find it's better than having lots of bits of paper all over the place. I just collect it all in there. And then if I have any thoughts or anything, I can jot it down and keep it. And the other thing is, of course, very importantly, because you're working with alcohol markers, you need to have something behind the page to stop any alcohol from bleeding onto the next. Preferably 2 sheets, I find, if you're using photocopy paper like I'm doing. This is just a A4 size photocopy paper. It's been folded in half and stuck behind there. Okay, now I will begin, as I like to do with these alcohol marker colourings, by laying a base amount of colour with the alcohol markers and then going back over it with some pencils to bring out some of the shadows and highlights, and then we'll end up with a white Uniball gel pen to put in all the sparkly bits at the end. Now I think we'll go for a fair-skinned mermaid this time round. There is one colour, I'll bring the colours here, for fair skin, which will be the salmon pink, and we've only got that colour to choose from really with these markers. You could use this one for a slightly more yellowish tone skin, that'd be fine, and this I find is absolutely perfect for a dark skin as well. But we'll do the salmon pink, and I will start off by zooming you guys in to the picture so you can get a good look at what I'm doing. Now, we'll talk a little bit about the actual markers themselves. These are the dual-ended markers. They have a, oops, I'll pull it off, a fine tip, which is fairly fine. You can get a nice fine mark. You press a little bit harder, you can get a thicker mark. And these have the chisel tips. Now, I've found that you can colour quite well with the chisel tips. I know that a lot of people prefer the brush tips. They're nice and soft and they've got a big brushy thing that makes it easier to blend all the colours in and do special effects. But you can do colouring with the chisel nib tips just as well, with a little bit of care. And you can see these pens are really very juicy, and I can tell you every single one of these pens worked fine when I tested them out. They're all quite juicy, so you've got plenty of bang for your buck there. For a marker that's less than $1, that's pretty good. Right. You can put the caps on the ends. I know with some alcohol markers you can't, so you risk losing the caps. These you can stick on the ends. The barrel is you can see it better on the end, is a square barrel, which is good. It means it doesn't roll around the table. You can if it's on a slope, but it won't roll around the table, so you won't have them rolling off onto the floor. Anyway, let's get started with the picture. Now, when you're colouring in a flat set of colour, you don't want to have little watermarks where, or lines where the two layers of colour intersect. So you want to colour fairly quickly so that the alcohol doesn't have time to dry before you add more colour, next to it, or else you will get those tide marks in your picture. So I'll start at the top, and I'm going to leave this area of her flesh just below her eyebrow, between her eyebrow and her eye, blank for the time being, because I want to put a colour in there instead of colouring it in a flesh tone. So I'll start at the top, and using the chisel nib, because it's a lot faster than using the pointy end. Just quickly lay down a layer of marker. So stroke it in gently. Work fairly fast so that, as I said, you don't get a tide mark. And on this particular paper, it's fairly easy. It's a bleedy paper, and one thing about a bleedy paper is that it's much easier to get a nice flat layer of alcohol marker. And as you can see, that's perfectly flat. I've got no tide marks in there at all. And one thing I will point out though is it's a bit hard with this colour, but on her bottom lip here there's a bit of bleed from the alcohol marker colour into the bottom of her lip. I'm not too worried about it because I'm going to colour it over with a darker colour anyway. But one of the problems with alcohol markers and paper such as this paper is that you will get a little bit of sideways bleeding. So when you're colouring next to a line, particularly if it's a thin line, leave a teeny margin between the edge of your colour and the line, because over the next 10 seconds or so the colour will bleed across to it. And you have to experiment a bit with the marker to see just how much bleed there is, as it depends on how juicy the marker is, and certain colours seem to bleed more than other colours. So anyway, we'll get a neck done, and I'm having to take some care around the lacy bits there. Rightio. I can always swap over to the chisel tip to do the little bits. As I said, you have to be fairly quick though, so that it doesn't dry out while you're trying to lay a flat layer. Okay, pop over to this side again. Having a nice little set of alcohol markers on a budget. The other thing to consider is that if you want more colours, if there's not enough colours in the range for you, you can always add on to it by buying other types of alcohol markers just in the colours that you're missing out, and just have a mixed bag of different alcohol markers. They all work the same on the paper, they all play with each other quite nicely. So you can have this set here, the Touch Cool ones, as a good base set, and then add on as you can financially afford to. But there is enough colours to give you a nice set to play with. Anyway, okay, that's the base colour down. Now I'm going to switch over and put down a layer of background. Now, by the looks of it, we've got bubbles here, and that tells me that she's probably under the water, and she, well, most likely a mermaid then, since there's a lot of mermaids in this book. And I'll colour this water let's see, what's a good colour in this pack? I'm going to go for the Peacock Blue, which is this colour, which is more of a teal colour, but it's a really pretty colour, and I think that'll work really well for the ocean. I'm planning to colour her hair a lighter colour, so if you're going a light colour for the hair, go a darker colour for the background. It is important when colouring to get a nice variety of tones, so you've got some very dark colours and some very light colours. It'll make your picture pop more if you've got that. Now there's some little areas down here, so I'm going to utilise the chisel tip to start off with and push that up so you can see what I'm doing. I'll just zoom in a little bit more. Now we're in position. Okay, now I'm just going to colour around the bits around her tendrils of hair there that you can see, and that's coming out a lovely deep rich teal colour. A fairly thin line, and the alcohol markers will bleed, so I'm going to use my chisel tip just to run along the edge of that. See how this works. Just one thing you can do is just use the finer tip to go around all the little things, or the finer lines, and then get out your broad tip, switch over to the broad side to colour in the bigger areas. And this paper, which I'm not really thrilled with for colouring on pencil. I can do it, I will do it, but there's much better paper about. But they're absolutely lovely if you want to get nice smooth layers of alcohol markers. That's the background, and I really love this very rich teal colour that this peacock green gives you. Now for her hair, I'm going to put those greys to use because I think I will give her silver coloured hair. Now there's a selection of different greys to choose from, and there are some warm greys here, a 5 and a 7, and cool greys, and there's something they call green grey, which is very similar to a cool grey, but it's got a slightly yellowish tinge to it. And I think I might use the green grey just because it looks a little bit more lively and a bit more silvery, natural silvery to me. So we've got two green greys. I'll pull them both out. That's the Green Gg3 and the Green Gg5. And I think if we want to go a little bit darker for the real shades, we'll go the Cool Grey 6, so the darkest of the cool greys, and that'll be my shadows. Right, there they are. Now we start off, with the lightest colour. Just had a thought. You know what? I'm going to do what I did with the Mermaid back here and put some colour streaks through her hair just to liven it up a little bit. Thinking I might go Pastel Yellow. Hang on, let me grab this so I can show you what I'm doing. So I'm going to put these two colours with Pastel Yellow, which is this colour, and I like a golden yellow, but we don't have one, so I can either go the brown grey, which is a funny name for sorry, here we go, the brown grey here, which is well, it's pretty much, it's like a yellow ochre. Actually, I would have called that yellow ochre, or I could go greenish and do the yellow green. So let's get my test pad. Okay, we'll put down some there. Here we go. We'll put down some of this and some of this. Oops, wrong one. These are just the 3 shades of grey that I've decided to do a hair in. Some of this. Right. And we'll stick some, I do a lot of this, as you may realise. That's that bright yellow, that's going to really stand out with that. Now if I use that yellow green, put that there. Oh, that's pretty, I like that. Well, the other alternative, I'll go on the other side and put down the yellow again. And brown grey. That's not bad either. You know what, I think I'll go for the green. You might like to do the other way, but okay. Right, I'm going to start off by putting in the highlights first because I'm just going to select certain locks for this. So we'll start off with the Pastel Yellow. Use the chisel tip, but I will use just like the end of the chisel tip because it's a bit thicker than the fine point, but I can still control the width of the line with it. So we'll choose some nice prominent locks to put the colour in. This one down here I think looks like a good one. So starting at the base. Now one of the things that you can do if you have got a brush tip is you can do that flicking action, which gives you a nice soft edge to your colouring, but you can't really do that very well with chisel tips. So we'll just simulate it a little bit, flicking the tip up. And note I am just using the tip slightly to one side of the chisel nib. Right, there. Now you notice I've left a highlight of white there, because I'm going to have a highlight running this way at the sort of like the top of the bulge of the curve of each of these locks, so that it looks like the light's reflecting off it. And then in the base of these locks right down, I'm going to darken them, and that'll look like they're sort of like curved round and going into shadow. Gives them a more natural look. Now we've got the yellow green, and again I'll use the chisel nib, and I will, starting at the base again, I'll just come about halfway down and just flick up a little bit of colour there. I'll see how I go, but I may even go a little bit darker right in the corners. Now if we want to blend that in a little bit, just take the lighter colour, the yellow again, and just go over the ends. And I'll just smudge that in. It's best to do it when the alcohol marker is still wet to get the best blend. So that looks rather good. It's giving her a lock, and I'll add some more of these. And I think we'll speed that up since you've got the idea. You can just see where I've placed it. Feel free to use the video at any one time if you're copying along. And you don't have to use the touch cools, by the way. You can use any alcohol markers that you're using, or you can even brave it and try it with some water-based markers. The Crayola water-based markers are a good one to try this with if you've got them. You may not get the nice smooth effect. It may be a little bit streaky, but if you're happy with that, go ahead with it. That'll only be more apparent in the larger areas. The smaller areas you can work fast enough that you don't get that streak. So anyway, this one is the Pastel Yellow, and I'm going to go through and put in all of these colour streaks in her hair. Right, I think that's all of the highlights or the little colour locks that we need. We will now do the rest of her hair, these nice silvery colours. Once again, this is the green Gray Gg3, and again I will use the chisel tip. Forgot to mention as well that there is a print on either side of the barrel which shows you which tip it is, so that you don't have to keep taking the lids off to check. You've got the fine tip right there, and you've got the broad tip right there, so that you can see when you pick the pen up which side's which. Anyway, we will do the rest of her hair exactly the same way as we did the colour streaks, but using the greys. So once again, start with your lightest colour, in this case it's the Gg3, and put in the first layer of colour or grey. I'm not going to worry too much about the bleed into the bubbles, mainly because it's a bit fiddly to work around, and also because I can pick them back out again with a white gel pen. So if it bleeds a little bit, I'm not going to be too concerned. I'm going with the darkest one, which is the Cool Grey 6. Yeah, I think that's going to look beautiful with silver here. See, you can put your greys to good use. Trick with blending with alcohol markers isn't to reach for the blender pen every time, which is the colourless pen that you get with a lot of sets. You don't get a colourless pen with this set, by the way. But I don't tend to use the colourless blender very much. I tend to just use the lighter of the two colours that I have laid down to do the blending. I find it gives you a better, richer colour that way, where using the colourless blender can bleed out your colours and make it look a bit fake. Okay, I think that's all of her hair done, and it takes up the majority of the picture. All up, that took me in real time about half an hour. Okay, now let's move on to the other colours. I'm thinking that I would like to stick with a green, yellow, and perhaps to like, I might make that a pink, white rose. And okay, and I'll give her a white bodice as well. Okay, so how to do white? Well, I have a very light sky blue colour here in the range. It's like that, and that would make a nice deeper colour for the rose. Or I could use, thinking of something else, if I can find it, this colour here, the turquoise blue, would also be pretty good. I'm just going to dig it up now. One thing I will mention about these markers is, for the most part, the caps do match the colour, so that there is some little difference, but say here with the sand it looks a bit deeper, but it's basically the correct shade. So it's always important to do a swatch test anyway. Don't rely on the caps, but as far as I can see with alcohol markers, these caps are for the most part pretty accurate. Anyway, I'll dig up that turquoise blue because I'm thinking I might go with that. It might be more in harmony with the rest of the picture. From what I just said then, this is one of these situations where they don't match. This turquoise blue, that's why I had difficulty finding the colour, is nothing like the very pale turquoise that comes out. So some are accurate and some aren't. These are for the most part accurate. Anyway, I'll get my little swatch page again, and we want to see with the colours that we've already got there how these will look. So this is the sky blue. There, that's nice, and this is the turquoise blue, which is also nice. Okay, I think for the brightness I might go with the sky blue for the rose, just to make it contrast a little bit more. I think going with the turquoise blue would make it disappear too much into the background. So we'll go with the sky. And the way I'm going to do the rose, I think what I'll do is just shade in where it's going to have some shadows. So right here, and this is where I could do with a blender pen. So with a blender pen I could just blend that colour out a little bit. Have I got one in my case? No, I don't. Oh, hang on, I've got one here. This is a Copic blender pen. Now you don't have to use a blender pen. You could get the same effect by using some pencils over the top. But I'm just going to show you what happens when you use a blender pen, which is a colourless alcohol marker. You can just rub it over the top. And as you can see, it bleeds the colour out by pushing the colour down into the paper. So it thins it out on the top. Now, the only problem I find, as I said, with the blender pens, it leaves it a little bit blotchy for my liking on this paper anyway, so I'm just going to add a little bit of colour back over the top. So what it does, as I said, it pushes the colour down into the paper, so it sort of cleans the top of the page by pushing the colour down underneath and leaving only a little bit of it out. If you've got a white Prismacolor pencil, or a very, thick pencil like that, a very, generous pencil, you can use that instead to lighten the edges. There you go. Just go in, and a little bit there to give me my white rose. Okay, oops, that wasn't quite in the centre of the frame, was it? There it is, you can see it now. Just going a little bit there. So the blender pens from other alcohol marker ranges are compatible, and if you want to do this, you can always purchase a blender pen from any of the alcohol marker ranges that offer them, like the Copics. Copics are expensive, but there are other ones that aren't as expensive. There, just to soften the edges up a little bit. As I said, and if you don't have them, you can do a similar sort of thing by using a white pencil to knock back some of the blue colour at the edges. Just going to add some back in. And there you've got a white rose. I'm thinking I might take the pale pink colour and just see what happens if I mix that in a little bit right. Give it more of a purple look right down the bottom. Yeah, that's not bad. There you go. That's just using this very faint, hang on, I'll show you it, this pale pink here. There. I'll blend it in a little bit with the sky blue. There we go, just to make the shadowy bits just a little bit darker. There. Okay, that'll do. That'll do for my rose, I think. Okay. Let's do a bit more there. Can't leave it alone, can I? Said you can get the same effect with pencils. Right, now for the leaves of the rose, we'll go a nice contrasting green. So I might do, I don't want to go all out bright, I might do the Viridian green or the dark green. They're very similar, the two colours here. The dark green's slightly warmer and the Viridian is slightly cooler, but I think you could very much easily take one of those out and still have the same colouring power. Maybe they could swap them out for another blue or red or yellow, I think. And I will take the mint green as well for the highlights and also the pale green. So together that'll look like pale green, whoops, mint green, and what did I say, the dark green. There, those three. And I'll try them out here, see if that works. Pale. Oh, wow, that's a big jump. That's the mint. Actually, the vivid green, I think, isn't quite so big a jump. Where's the vivid green? Might do this instead. Oh, that's a warmer green. Yeah, warmer green. Okay. Alright, we'll put the... But it isn't quite as big a step. No. I think I like it with the vivid green. Okay, so we'll use those ones. That's the dark green, the vivid green, and the pale green. So I'll start off again with the pale green. Just lay down some highlights in the centre. On this side here. Yeah, that works. I think I like that. And we'll go around the outside. Oops, with the vivid green. A little bit. Don't know if we really need the dark green. I might put it in anyway because I like to have a lot of contrast. A little stripe in the middle there. And using the fine tip, just go around the outside edge. Being careful not to put any colour on your rose, but even if you do, you can take it back out again with a white gel pen. Alright, that's our rose. I might use the turquoise blue to just shade in the bubbles a little bit. just a little dot there, just on the bottom part of the bubble. Some more bubbles we've got on there. It's good. The turquoise is a lighter shade of this peacock blue, so it actually matches the water. I still think this needs a little bit more colour in this top section here, so what I might do, I'm going to splash out and I'll make these pink berries so I can continue the pink into the love hearts. So we haven't got a huge range of pinks here. You've only got the pale pink and you've got this really retina-flying vivid pink. I think the pale pink might be a bit too pale. Let's have a look. Put these on here again. May be able to tone it down with a little bit of pencil over the top if it's too retina-flying. Actually, that's not too bad, the pale pink. Yeah, that's just a bit too bright for this picture, I think. I'll go with pale. And what I'll do when I do the pencil, I'll go in with another shade of pink to bring it all out. Now to do these, I'm going to just colour in the centres. So I'm leaving a white border for a bit of reflection. It just makes it look a little bit more three-dimensional. Okay, now I like that, and I'll go in with a bit of a darker pink as well, and perhaps a Uniball gel pen to put a sparkle on it. Right, now I'm happy with that rose. It'll need some more work with pencil, but basically as far as the alcohol markers are concerned, that's fine. So moving down, we've got her bodice, which I also want to be the same blue as the rose. Again, when I say blue, I mean it's a white bodice, but it's going to have a blue shadow in it, sort of like a bluish tinge. So I might use the chisel tip, and I'll pick out where the shadow would be underneath her chest there. Bosom, there you go, there's a nice tame word. So I'll draw a line there, and then I'll colour everything underneath it. So it looks like the light's hitting here at the top. And down here needs to be coloured. Oh, just getting a bit lighter down there underneath the arrow fledging there. Fletching. And I think underneath the corset, I'm going to say that's a continuation of the bodice. So I'll put a little bit of blue. Oops, hang on, I'll put it up here so you can see what I'm doing. I'll put just a little bit of blue here, leaving a bit of white, showing that the sun's striking, or the light source is striking it. There. I think that's all we need to do with that. I'll go in and shade it dark with pencils, I think. Right, now the bodice, since we've got the pink up here, let's actually no, we'll use the pink for the love heart. And the bodice, what colour can we go? Don't want to do green on it, I don't think that would work, but I think I might do a brown. So let's do that love heart first, and the way I'm going to do it is the same way as I did the berries, where I'll just go, I won't go right to the edge of the line, I'll just go near it like that, and I'll pick out some more shading with pencils afterwards. So do that. Working to get a nice smooth layer. Yeah, that looks balanced. Because I'm going to do those love hearts pink. I'll add a little bit of pink to them. Again, leaving a little bit of white at the top for reflection. Okay, now the bodice, we might make a dark chocolate colour, I think. So we'll do the dark chocolate, but we'll put down the rose beige first, because that'll be the highlighted areas. Actually, you know, I'm not going to. I'll put the I think this is just going to be a bit too overpowering, the chocolate, so I'll actually take that back. I'm not going to use it. I'll do the shading with a pencil instead. Colour that in too. Leave that up to the pencil shading to bring that out better. Now the fletching of the arrow I'll do with grey. So I'll just to match it with the hair, I'll put just the centre bit grey, and then I'll be really, really cunning and take a pastel yellow and do the tips with the pastel yellow, leaving a margin of white paper in the centre. Right, and then it's just a little echo of her hair down there. Now her choker, I think to match everything is going to have to be the rose beige. As you see here, I keep going back to the colours I've already used, and that's so that there is a unity in the picture. You should really just stick with certain shades of certain colours, otherwise you can make it end up looking like, you know, a rainbow exploded. Or maybe that's the effect you want. Choker. Again, I will shade it a bit better with the pencils. Up to that part. We're moving along. We're not that far away from it now. Her jewellery, that looks like pearls. Go the same colour as the bubbles, which is the turquoise blue, which suggests in this instance that the pearls, which have shiny surfaces, are reflecting the colour of the sea. Again, I'm not colouring the whole thing, I'm just putting a little dot sort of out in the lower part of the centre of each of those pearls. Now, I'll take the original peacock green that we were using, and I'll just dab very, very gently a tiny dab of colour right in the centre. So it's surrounded by the lighter turquoise blue, just to make it sparkle a little bit more. It's a subtle effect, but it works really well. There. Okay, right, now we're up to her lips, which will, I think, will have to be the pale pink, because I really don't have any other colour, unless I want to go all out and make her lips green. That could be interesting. Nah, I'll go with the pale. Right. With the pink. Now I'll do all of her, the top of her lip, the little cupid's bow. The bottom lip, I'll leave a patch in the middle white, so it looks like a reflection. Just be a little supple. Look. Now the other thing that you do with the lips is you make the top lip a little bit darker and the corners right at the edges a little bit darker, and that'll give her a nice pouty look. We'll do that with the pencils. Okay, I think we're coming together now. We'll choose some colours for her fish friends here. Right. Okay, little fishies. I think it's time to bring back the green, because we've only got green up here with the rose, and one of the tricks with using colours for unity, as I said, is to use the same colour in different places, and that helps to unify the picture. So we're going to visit our green again. It's a pretty strong green, so what I might do is I'll use the green for his stripes. Now we'll colour him all pale green. I'm just debating whether to do his stripes dark green or whether to do a red to make him jump out. I haven't used red anywhere else on the picture, that's the only problem. But if I do introduce a red, and we've got the red here in the geranium, which is a pinkish red, I can put it on the stripes without your attention being drawn to the high contrast between the green and the red. I might do that actually, you know what? I will be bold and brave and add the geranium. And I'll do that here, just as little dots amongst this pink. Actually, I like that, it makes the rose stand out a bit more. And then again, in these little, it's not quite the right colour to use, but it'll do. Alright, now I can do this pale pink, and we can put it in this little fish. Shall I? Shall I? Another idea. I'm going to put the pale pink on his underneath. And the same with this little guy down here. The dark green for the stripes. That's a really powerful dark green. Just be very careful when you're applying this. Just dab it on very gently so that you don't bleed into the body of the fish. Okay, yeah, I like that. And this, I'm going to give him a red eye. And the very tips of his fins, I'll put a little line of red. Just on the very tips. Ah, yes, that's perfect. He fits in with the picture nicely. He doesn't bleed into the picture. He isn't hidden in it, but he isn't taking your eye and taking the focus away from the mermaid's face. Yeah, I like that. Cool. See, because the focus of the picture is this here, the mermaid looking at the fish, and that does it quite nicely. Right, now for her eyeshadow. I think if I go pink, there'd be, oh, you know what? Easy. We'll give her a green eye, and then we can go pink over the top for the eyeshadow. So I will use the lightest colour green, the pale green again. The way I did the eye, I apologise for, or out of the viewfinder, was with the pale green, the very vivid green and the dark green. Putting the pale green down first, then the vivid green around the outside of the pale green, and then a tiny little bit of the dark green right along the bottom there. Okay. And I just used the Pastel Yellow to colour in all of the eye, and the Rose Beige to do the shells. Okay, right, we are now ready to grab the pencils out, so I will just zip away for a second, put all my Touch Cool markers away, and we'll grab the pencils out and finish this girl up. Now we're ready to start adding a little bit of depth and shading with pencils. As usual, I will be using my much loved Polychromos pencils for this. You can use Prismacolors or whatever pencil brand that you prefer to use. What's your favourite? They'll all work pretty much the same way. I will say that the pencils though that give more of a colour payload, like the Polychromos or the Prismacolors, will act better than say doing it with Crayola, which gives you a lighter payload. So the other pencil that I'm going to use as well is a white Prismacolor Premier. And the reason I like to use this one is because it gives such a heavy payload of colour. It is much easier to bring out highlights using this than with the white Polychromos pencil. The other thing I'll be using, as I mentioned at the start, is the Uniball Signo Broad Uniball pen. I recently saw the fine tips at Officeworks, so I'm going to grab myself one of those and try one day. But anyway, we'll stick with that for this particular picture. First thing you want to do is lay in the shadows, and I've picked these two colours out, which in the Polychromos is the light flesh and the cinnamon. I like the cinnamon. It's got a slightly desaturated look. It's not quite as bright as the pinks of the flesh colour, so I think it works a bit better for the shadows. We'll start with the lightest shade, which is the light flesh, and start laying down some shadow. And this is very faint to start off with because we're going to blend it in. One of the things with putting a layer of pencil over the top is that you'll have a texture from it, a pencil texture, sort of like a grainy look. You can get rid of that by blending it, not with liquid blenders, mind you. I'm talking about with blending pens. If you put liquid blenders on there, you're liable to stuff up the alcohol underneath. But this is very faint. I don't even know if this is being picked up by the camera, but where I'm putting it is just under the chin line, the line of her cheek and her chin and her jaw, on her neck, around her eye, just a little bit there underneath her eye, don't go mad, and just where her nose is there as well, where her nose will be, and this band just here between the eyes, and where the nose sort of like dips in to meet the forehead, and again just underneath the hairline too. Okay, that's the first layer. Now I'm going to grab the cinnamon, which looks like this. So it's like a darker flesh, slightly desaturated. It's really good for doing shading on skin tones. If you don't want to go the realistic one, which is where I'd use the grey-blue colour. This is more of a cartoony picture, so I'm not going to use the grey-blue. I'm going to leave it the brighter cartoony colours. Just knocking in some of that, and a little bit under her chin, and definitely down here around the neck, which would be in almost total shade. Going a bit heavier here right into the back of the neck and getting lighter as you reach this outer part, which is more in the light. Don't need to colour heavy, just a light touch will do. I'll just put a little bit of a shade here where her hair is falling as well on her face. Can move on to, actually before we do that, I might go just one shade darker around the face. Let's have a look. Cinnamon, I might use the Caput Mortem. Sorry, I absolutely butchered the pronunciation. I do not know how to pronounce this colour, but I'm just going to use that for the very deepest shadows here. And that colour, whoops, I better show you, looks like this. So it's sort of like a very, very cool medium dark brown. And it'll give us just the tiniest little touches here and there to give us our very darkest shadow. Get on to the rest of her body. I might actually start with the cinnamon. Okay, push that down so you can see what I'm doing down here. One trick is to make the shadow of closer objects more sharper, and the softer shadows like the curve of skin a lighter blended shadow. So the sharp contrast tells the eye that that lock of hair is resting very close to her skin, where the lighter blending of this shadow into her flesh tone tells you that's a soft rounded, so I was about to say geography, no, it's the same sort of thing, you know, it's a soft rounded shape. I'll grab the, okay, it's number 169 in Polychromos, just in case I've butchered that name beyond recognition. That's all the flesh tones, and I'm going to give her a little bit of blush. So I'm going to use, so let's have a look. I might use, looking at my little, I actually think the madder would be better, but I think it's a little bit dark. I'll try the Rose Carmine. I'm going to use this just to give her cheeks a bit of a blush, because otherwise she looks a bit pale. Little circles just under her eye here. Now just on her nose, just a tiny bit on her chin. Blend it in a bit better with the light flesh. Okay, now the other thing I like to do is I just like to put a little bit of a rosy glow to the shoulders. It's kind of something that's I just like to do. Slightly sun-kissed. And she's a mermaid, so she's out in the sea all the time. She has to come to the surface sometimes. There we are. A little bit of a rosy glow to her shoulders. Using the light flesh again to blend it all in. Right. That's, I think, the mermaid's flesh done. I will be adding to it a little bit with some white gel pen, but not at the moment. I'll do that right at the end when I've finished everything. The next thing to do is her lips, and I'm going to go dark red with that. If I can find it, yeah, dark red. So it looks like it's in shadow, and then I just put a little bit of it around that outer sides and a tiny little bit running along the bottom, and a tiny little bit running through the middle there. And as you can see, that gives her lips all the dimension it needs. That's all you need to do. While I've got the red in hand, I'm going to work on the red bits. So a little bit of it on here on these berries, just to make them slightly darker. That looks better to me. Alright. Now down here I'll do the underbelly of the fish. I'm going to leave just a little line of pink there, because fish is very shiny, and I want the suggestion that he's sort of reflecting a little bit of light from underneath. Same with this guy over here. Put a little bit of the red in his eye. Okay, now her hearts. Again, I'm just going to add a little bit there around where we put the red, because that carmine colour from the touch-cool markers was really just a little bit too bright, too warm. So this will just tone it down a little bit. And this big heart down here, I'm going to blush in some red where the arrow pierces the heart there. And we'll down this outer edge and make a little bit of a dark line. We'll work on the green bits now. So with the fish, I'll go for, thinking dark phthalo green might be a little bit too bluish. But there's nothing really in between there. It'll have to be the hooker's green, I think. You know what, I'm going to do pine green. That'll do. This is the pine green colour, so it's that one there. And I'll use this just to put a little bit of a shadow in the same way, reflecting this, how I've done this, leaving a little margin of the lighter colour. This helps to give the fish a feeling of being round. There we go. And the same with this one peeking out here. Put this green just around the edges of her eye and a few little spokes coming out from the pupil. There. Okay, I like that. I don't know if we need to do much with the roses. I think that's pretty much one of the tricks, by the way, with colouring is you put most of your attention on the parts that are going to be the centre of attention, and less detail and work in the parts that are just sort of like supporting the rest of the picture, more the background or pieces. So in this picture, because this is the area of your centre of attention, this is where you want, this area here is where you want to put the most work. And it doesn't matter if the surrounding areas are a bit rough, because that's not what the eye is being pulled to. I've got one of these Caran d'Ache Supra colours in lime green. I'll just put a little dash of that to highlight those. I'm sure there's an equivalent in the Prismacolor range for that. In the polychromos, I could perhaps use the cadmium yellow lemon. That would do the same trick. It's like a very light yellowish green. Okay, I'll work a little bit on the roses, so I'm going to pick a dark blue. I think I will have the helio blue reddish, which is that colour there. And I'll use that just to poke in right down at the base of the rest of the colours, just to give it the very darkest shadow, so everything pops a bit more. And I might grab out the sky blue in polychromos and just add a little bit more dimensions to the petals. Okay, with that, right, I think what we need to work on now is her bodice. And what I'll do with that, I will get hold of my cobalt blue. That'll do. Cobalt blue, that's this one. Cobalt blue, and I'll use this to put in some shadows. So right here at the base of the corset, where it's going to be very dark here, and underneath her bust, and just fade that in a little bit as well, up into the other blue. Fletching here for the arrow, I'm going to go for I might do this cool grey 6. And just in the centre of the fletching, I'll just put a tiny little bit of grey there. For more contrast, and not much more to go now, is there? We will do the corset. That's the brown, so let's have a look at what we've got on the browns here that match. So it's this brown. So to go a bit darker, I will go burnt sienna, I think will do the trick. Burnt sienna, there we go. Right. Very, very good for watercolour paintings, burnt sienna, particularly when you mix it with ultramarine blue. You get this absolutely fantastic grey colour that is so useful for so many things. It's absolutely essential, I think, for my palette anyway. I'm just going to go around the outside of this corset, or the edges, sorry, not the outside, the edges of this corset to make it a little bit darker. Go a tiny bit darker using Van Dyke Brown, which is this one, the Van Dyke Brown. On here, that looks like that. I'm just going to use that right for the edges, right for the very darkest bits. So here where it disappears around her waist and underneath her bosom and right in the corners. There. I think we can almost call this done. We'll do her choker, give it the same treatment using the same browns. A little bit of Van Dyke Brown right there at the edges. Okay. Now the only other thing that I think I might do is, I think the hair where the green is just needs to be brought out a little bit more. So I'll go searching through my greens and see which one would fit our needs. I'm really tempted to grab the light green, but I think that's just going to be a bit too dark. Sorry, the grass green, but I think it's going to be a bit too dark. I'll try. Let's have a look. Let's get May green out. Oh god, not much left of that one. Ha! May green and light green. This little pad here, and we've already got the two greens there, so let's see what works better for the deeper the colour. That's the light green, and that's the May green. That's much more deep, that's much brighter, and that's much more desaturated, isn't it? I think this actually looks the most natural of the two. That looks like it's two shades getting a little bit too bright and too fluorescent, and this one feels a little bit more natural if you sort of like fade it in. Yeah, I'll use this. This is the May green. So some of these greens have taken a beating in their lifetimes. Some of them are going to be replaced soon. Looks of it. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is, I'm happy with the depth of colour in the grey parts for the silver parts for the hair, but I'm just going to add a bit more to the darker parts of where the hair folds into the little crevices and where they're furthest away from the highlights. Yeah, like that. This is good. This just brings that colour just that slightly bit deeper. Let's fade that in right there into the little crevices and where you've got the darker green, where you've got that green colour. Yeah, this works. Okay, I'm happy with all the pencil that we've laid down. I was considering doing a little bit more work on the background, but I think I'll leave it just the way it is. So for our final little effects, I'm going to use the white Prismacolor Premier and the Uniball Signo. And I use the white Prismacolor Premier just to bring out a little bit of highlight. You don't want to go too nuts with it. I find it's very nice just down the arms, the neck, here where the light would hit her, the top of her chest the most. I'm just scribbling a little bit, blending it in. Just on the neck. Forehead. Nose. And with these fish, I'll just go across the top here. Look at that. See what I've done there? I've kept the original colour underneath, but I've lightened it. And you can even do one across the centre like that. Same with this one down the bottom here. And just here in the middle of our eyeshadow there. Right, and it's time to put a little sparkle in. Actually no, I'm just going to use a little bit there, just to lighten out. And as I was saying before, with using your white to soften the edges of your alcohol markers, this is how you do it. Just rub the white in just to take the hard edges off your alcohol markers if you haven't got a blending alcohol marker, a clear one. There. Okay, time to add a little bit of sparkle. So first of all, we'll just make sure the marker is running smoothly, and it is. We'll put a few little dots here on her cheeks, and in her eyes, and on her lips. I like to put a little bit of sparkle into her eye makeup. Concentrating mostly on where the light strikes it, because that's how it works. Now, where else can we do it? We can put a few little dots here on the rose. I mean, strictly speaking, it's underwater, so this isn't dewdrops because the rose is wet already, but it still gives a bit of a sparkle. I'll put a little bit of a dot on each of these little berries. It's amazing what a little dot of white will do. And here on the leaves here, I'll just put a little bit on. Right. Okay, where else do we need it? I like to put little dots on the shoulders. Okay, now that definitely brings your eye to her. If you want to bring out the bubbles that have been a bit lost with the alcohol markers, just use your white pen now to pick them all back out again. Let's see now. Now, I might go a bit crazy and add some sparkle to the streaks in her hair. How's that? We won't overwhelm her altogether by doing sparkle all through her hair, but just where the colour streaks are. Again, concentrating on the lightest areas and just leaving a little sprinkle down the darker areas. Will make it more natural looking. Let's just put a little bit of a white mark across the fish too. And just above where I've got the Prismacolor watermark. I might just break up the edge of the red on its fins and tail by adding a few little dots of white along the margins. There, okay, I think we're getting very close to being done. I might just add a sparkle of colour in this love heart as well. Oops. Just along the outer margin. As you can see here where the margin is, where I go from the white to the pink, I'm going to soften that margin by putting lots of dots over it. And then I'll just put a few stray dots throughout the rest of it. There, I think that works. Okay, I think I could keep playing with her forever, but she's done. So here is our little mermaid all complete, using the Banggood Touch Cool colour markers and some help from some pencils. I've really enjoyed using these markers. I think for somebody who wants to get into colouring, using alcohol markers, for this level of colouring, this has been fantastic and I think well worth the price, and I would quite happily, and I will quite happily colour with these again. I hope you've enjoyed this review plus a tutorial. It's been a bit of a long video, but I hope that you've come along with me for the ride and enjoyed the experience of watching this. Whatever colouring adventures you are on, I hope you are having a great time, and until next time, happy colouring. I hope you're enjoying any colouring adventures that you are currently on, and until next time, happy colouring.